You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 64, Stonewalling Your Players. Today we talk about stonewalling your players in your game. We discuss how far you should let the other players run without shutting them down. We also discuss why you should gently let your players down if you are going to limit their actions. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribe and we'll ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, he won't stop you from putting on the mask, Jared.
Hello, everyone. Aaron, good day.
Jared, good day. How are you? Right before we started this podcast, you had a pretty incredible announcement that I was like, man, I wish I was rolling when you first announced this.
So I announced it to you first. I'm going to announce it to our listeners. So now being 35 years old, I have now decided that I am giving up on the division between DC and Marvel. I think that both comics that all comics, despite publishers, should be appreciated in their own light for wonderful stories and wonderful characters.
Again, this is super adult of you. Where did you have the serendipitous moment?
You know what? It was I was talking to my brother about Thor.
Okay. And
specifically the run, I forget the writer now, of course, now in the time that but there was one writer who did a Thor run, and I read that whole run, and it was fantastic. It was one of the best. It's when Asgard ends up like being over Oklahoma, so that might help people narrow it down to which one I'm talking about. It's a fascinating comic. I loved it, and then like I sat there and I'm like, man, I've really been down on Marvel, even though they have some incredible characters, incredible stories. They do. And like, I've just been hating on them because I love Batman, and Batman wouldn't hate.
Listen, I mean, you're wearing your team shirt. You had the D and the C on it. Okay.
Yeah, but just because I wear a DC shirt does not mean that I can't appreciate Marvel.
This is the true evolved sports fan type take as well. When you start like looking at like people that you hate in sports, and you're like, I just hate them because they're on the other team and they're better than me.
Yeah, like
and they're good. They're like, that's the reason why I hate them.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Marvel's better than DC. Let's not go that
all right.
far.
Yeah, sorry. I stepped it back. Because I'm just gonna put the division wall right back up. Okay?
Yeah,
I got
the Berlin Wall. Just
the prickly porcupine over here is going to show his spine.
I wouldn't say it's better. It's there
are things that you can appreciate.
There are things that I can appreciate. I ended up watching. So I got sick a couple of weeks ago, as you know, and I ended up watching every Marvel movie. I was really, really sick for 48 hours. And I mean, essentially, the only thing you can do is watch movies, try to keep your mind off of being sick. And I watched like pretty much every Marvel movie that I had not seen, right? Like, because I had seen a couple, like Captain Marvel and most of the Captain Americas. But I finally ended up watching like Avengers Endgame and Endgame Part 2 and all of them. All Age of Ultron I had never seen. Like, I'd only seen the first Avengers. You know what? It's kind of funny, like, as people have raved, like, Marvel, they make the best movies ever. I actually, like, from an objective standpoint, was not all that, like, this is the greatest movie ever. Like, Thanos is the greatest villain ever conceived. I wasn't. I was like, hey, it was good. It was a good movie. Like, don't get me wrong.
That's the thing, is that I feel you get out of them is a consistently good movie. Like, if you go watch it, you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, like I didn't walk out of a single one of those movies, like, or walk out of, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I didn't end any of those movies being like, well, that was a waste of my time.
That was a dud. Like, I mean, like, and again, you the listener, you might disagree, but for the most part, they're all pretty consistently good.
Now, like, then again, I don't think anyone should listen to my movie recommendations because the whole world hates Batman versus Superman, and that is my favorite film of all time. Like, I freaking love that movie so goddamn much. And the whole world hates it. The whole world hates it. But like, I'm like, it's the Batman. I know people hate on Ben Affleck, but like, he played the Batman that I've always loved the most, which is the paranoid, kind of jaded, like Bruce Wayne, who's like, I am friends with these people, but I have plans on killing all of them if need be. Like, that is my favorite freaking Batman. The true Dark Knight. So
yeah.
What's our topic for today? Now that we went off on comic books for like, I don't know, 5 minutes.
I felt like it was important. If you've been listening to this for a while, you're probably like, oh, Jared is
evolving as a human being.
You
can't teach an old dog new tricks.
You can. So today we're going to talk about stonewalling your players. Okay. And as a player, I hate this. Okay. As a GM, there is a level of necessity to shutting your players down, but doing so gracefully.
So just for our listeners, when Aaron says that he hates it, so like there's Rage Against the Machine, the band. Aaron pretty much like Rage Against the Wall. Like he rages. It sticks in his craw like a bone. Like
I think if you've ever played a game and your GM has shut you down on something that you're trying to do, just totally said, nope, not happening, and like they shut down all avenues, it is just the most infuriating thing. It's the best way to get your players to disengage with everything that you're trying to do.
It's so for our listeners, you might have a group of gamers that know that you're like, oh, I've done it to them multiple times, no one's ever complained. They're complaining in their head, or they're complaining after game. They're just being polite and not complaining to your face.
They're going, Rick is a son of a bitch, and he's not letting me do
X, Y, and Z.
He's not letting me tackle the problem in front of me the way that I think I should be able to tackle it.
And I mean, stonewalling. So I will always disagree with stonewalling because our friend Nick put role playing. One of the reasons that he loved role playing more than video games was he said that he has no boundaries. And that is a true statement. That is one of the great advantages that role-playing has, is that I'm not, it's funny because I'm playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I know it's been like 15 years since it's been released. It's Victorian England, so I can at least like have my guns. There are no cars, but I can at least have guns. I'm wondering why there are no free horses in that game. There are carriages, but there are no horses. And it's like, I just want a horse. I don't want a whole carriage get up. But we're like just a horse, like illegal in Victorian Europe? Did it have to be attached to a carriage? I don't know. Maybe that's a thing.
You digress.
I digress to an extent because I'm just saying laws. Like, I don't know the laws of Victorian England, but I digress. There's a part in Assassin's Creed where you get too close to the boundary and all of a sudden it's, like unstable area and you can't go into it. And role-playing doesn't have that. If your 3 players say, you know what, we're getting on a plane and going to Tibet, a fast-dancing GM has the capability to be like, okay, you buy 3 first-class tickets to Tibet. You land there. And, immediately you're encroached upon by 3 former Nazis who don't want you to be there. Why? I don't know. We're going to figure it out together. And I'm going to build a story off of it.
It really depends on how intense you want your... Because we talked about it in a prior podcast about guiding your players back onto the track.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it depends on how far off the track you want to let them go or how far you want to dance with your players. A lot of GMs will say, my world has 0 boundaries. And I think that if you have no rules in your mind about where the players should go, or there are no rules in your mind about when to guide the players back, it is it's going to be really hard for you to get the players back to where they want to go. That's a true sandbox type game.
It is, and the thing is with GMs, and as we talked about in the previous episode, it's the gentle guide, and it's also the informing the players. Like, if you guys go off to Tibet, I'm going to close the game because that's not the story. Like, what we'll do is you'll land in Tibet, and we'll say you lived happily ever after.
Or you could have them land in Tibet, and you could try to figure out what you want to do next week.
Right. That's the fancy dancing. Like, for me, I would prefer the fancy dancing rather than closing a game, especially if I have players that I'm really, or characters that I feel are really cool and that I want to explore what they would do in Tibet, as long as my players aren't just being jerks. Because sometimes your players can be jerks.
Yes, your players can be jerks. I've definitely been a jerk of a player to you as the GM. I'm sorry for doing that.
I'm sorry for a lot of things.
Yes, it goes both ways on that. Again, when you play the GM, one of the things you also have to think about is that you're not just playing the role to capitulate and make your players happy, okay? Because your players can screw up things that you were doing, and they could screw up everything for the entire table.
Yeah.
Okay, one player can destroy a game depending on what actions they choose to do, especially if they do so as a group of players.
And as a storyteller, that's where really the Stonewall is used in a litigious manner. Litigious? I don't want to say litigious.
I guess there are times when you might say, like, we shouldn't do this. Or you could interject, you could break the fourth wall and come in and say, listen, if we're going to do that, you have to understand the consequences of what's going to come.
Your consigliere
yes.
moment. Like, for example, one of your players like, I'm going to go rob the first bank. I see. And you tell him, like, dude, do that, your character's going to be wanted. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't even have a mask right now. Like, perhaps this is not the best move that you could make. And it's the gentle guide. Don't do that.
You're basically saying, don't do that. I will probably tell it for you, but typically if we were to do something of that nature, Jared would just go, all right, that's what you guys want to do. He writes us up a little outro for it because guess what? You're going to get caught.
Yeah. And I have written outros before, I've written, I've written, passages where that's it. That's the end. Like, you guys go in and you guys come out and you're surrounded by cops. And do you want to go out shooting or do you want to go out in handcuffs? Because those are the only two solutions. You might say, well, that's stonewalling your players. And it's really not, because it's just when you can see the end of the tracks, it's still the player's choice to head into that tunnel where the train is coming through the other side. You're telling them flat out, like, there's a light and it ain't daylight in that tunnel. It's a train. Your players at the end have made that choice. Now you can choose to fancy dance and be like, okay, here we go. You're going to rob but at least alert your players to the natural consequences. Like, there's a high probability.
Particularly if they're going to do something that's going to be egregious, could potentially end in, like, the end of the characters completely. Like, if one of your characters says, I'm going to shoot the king with my crossbow.
Like, just
hip fire your crossbow at the king. And
it's kind of funny, the times that Aaron and I have at this moment talked about stonewalling a player is when they're about to do something egregious, out of character, something majorly disruptive, and let's just say downright stupid. I'm going to go rob a bank with no equipment. I'm going to go hip shoot the king with a crossbow. I'm going to fly to Tibet with no plan whatsoever.
Yeah, if the player is doing something so off the rails from where you are right now, like it's like a 180-degree divergence from what you're currently doing. You got to be like, you got to come out and be like, what's going on?
and there's to my point. What's the motivation? Is it this player likes disrupting stories and that this is kind of like their thing. They love just throwing oddballs at the storyteller and you know, seeing how you react because they find it funny. How do the rest of your players respond to that? Are you thinking of your whole table in that moment? Are they all sitting around and going like, well, Jared's at it again, you know, going screwing up the whole story because he wants to, you know, axe murder or crossbow murder a king? You got to look at the player's motivations. Why is he doing that? Is he bored with the game? Is the game not what they're looking for thematically? Is it just they're bored in life? And they're like, well,
they just have a bad day.
Do they have a bad day? Is this typical behavior for them? Because I've met the gamers that literally quite make it their mission to seemingly shatter stories of GMs, and they're very proud of it typically. And I've yet to understand the motivation psychologically
Some
behind
people just
that.
want to watch the world burn.
Yeah, that's another thing. Because I saw it a lot in LARP, and they were like, "Yeah, I did it again," and I'm just like, like you tool, you freaking tool.
I mean, again, you know the player when they're trying to ruin something, and again, you can make a decision there. And this is one type of Stonewall. I don't want to just stay focused on this one here, but you know when that happens that, like, if you have 6 players at your table, one person is like, I'm going to shoot the king right now. And it's like, you know, radio record screeching noise. Yeah, you know, stop. Okay, wait a minute. If you hip fire your crossbow at the king, I need to let you know what's going to happen to your band of merry adventure.
You're all going to get gacked by the king's guard.
Okay, you do not survive. There is not a combat at the end of this because we're not going to play it out. Okay, yeah. You will lose.
Because eventually they're going to have everybody.
You know, eventually I will, you know, boil the ocean and I will come after you.
I mean, unless you've got, you know, level 40 and they're in a level 1 town and then they can murk the whole town. But again, is this counter?
What's the goal of that though there? I mean, tell me at the end of that, if they decide to go ahead and do that, how the heck do you get them back onto anything that resembles the story you want to tell them?
That exactly. You have to take your own feelings into account as a storyteller. And one of the things that, you know, if you have a group that they're like, yeah, I'm gonna take over this town on a whim, I still might not Stonewall if the entire group is in agreement.
That's what the group wants to do together. That's what the group wants to do together. But typically you'd figure that out as motivation for the group in your session 0.
Exactly.
Not on the fly, like you're talking to the king and it's like, gonna hit fire.
And the question is, you know, did something happen in the story that's causing this? They're bored. They haven't had combat in 7 sessions. It's all been diplomatic talk and back alley deals. And they've had it up to here with you. And they want to fight something.
You're not satisfying their needs that they would need in the story.
Right. Or is it because everyone's just acting silly that night? You decided to break out your 35-year-old scotch and you all just polished it off right before game and they're all a little drunk. And in that case, you might want to be like, well, guys, you know, not a great idea. This is what's going to happen and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, we're still doing it. This is why I don't actually very much advertise the idea of combining alcohol in game, but I know it's a very common thing. But in the end, do you Stonewall your players from that? Again, it's your whole team. Take that second. Take a second to breathe. Call a bathroom break. You know, like, I need a bathroom break for a second. Go in the bathroom, weep for a couple of minutes at the loss of your story, try to figure out what's going on. Why is my whole crew suddenly gone dumb? And it happens. I've seen those nights where everyone goes dumb.
Yes, it happens. It happens collectively where everybody can just, like dominoes falling into place. Everyone's doing the wrong thing at the wrong time.
And it happens. Like, and you're just like,
what has gone wrong here?
We've played a good, serious game for 45 sessions, and then suddenly tonight, everyone just took their stupid pills, collectively, they passed him out right before game. They're like, stupid pill, because we're gonna do some dumb shit tonight.
So, again, now when you're examining this is one type of scenario where you might decide to stonewall your player there. You might say, okay, well, they catch you pulling the draw on it and they stop you. Okay. I guarantee you, if this situation happens and you stop the player from enacting the situation, they're going to be pissed. Okay. Oh, yeah. They're going to be pissed that you're not going to let them do that thing. And one of the questions you might have to ask is, well, are the players now doing that because they're so disengaged from my story because I have been doing this to them all along? And that's one of the questions that you start looking back on. This is where stonewalling gets bad. Are there no ways to solve your problem besides the one that you have figured out in your head?
Ladies and gentlemen, here comes the rage. Because we are going to talk about the storytellers that, if you know that you always stonewall, or if you've never examined, do I stonewall my players? Do I try to make them hit point A, point B, point C, and I will stonewall them from not going any other path?
Your story should have multiple paths to getting you out of the woods, effectively. If you do not have multiple paths as a GM, if you have not thought up other ways to execute a plan, if it must be done, somebody must talk to the wizard in the keep who gives them the quest to go into the forest, to find the elf in the forest, to make a magical bowstring, and then you go back to the wizard in the keep. And oh, by the way, the wizard in the keep had the answers all along, and somebody asked the wizard in the keep the first time if they had the answers, and the wizard in the keep went, well, I couldn't do that because you didn't go into the woods, the forest, to get the magical bowstring to come back here. Did the players need to do all these other stupid things in order to accomplish it? Would the players have not done them had you given them the answers? Because would the answer have not made sense had the wizard provided adequate information?
Do you feel the rage, ladies and gentlemen?
I hate this so much because it is the idea of, again, you're not playing a video game here. Okay? You are telling a combined narrative story. You are doing a choose your own adventure book to get to the end of your story. Okay? You have it confined. It's 200 pages. But guess what? Even in the best choose your own adventure books, you could read 30 pages and be done with that book.
It's true. And I mean, like, it is so freaking true. You can have, I would say, a good storyteller like myself. That was tooting my own horn. That was a little... I'm so great. Okay, I feel bad about that.
You're more practiced.
I'm more practiced. A more practiced storyteller will always worry that their players are going to solve their entire freaking story in 3 freaking moves and be done. I'm worrying about it to this very day. I got a game going on right now where I'm like, first night, I'm like, the guy's got this wrapped up. And then I talked to Aaron about it on my way back from, Ohio. And Aaron's like, we have no clue where we're going. And I'm like, really? You don't have this solved? Like, I thought you guys did.
But you guys have again, this is the thing. Because you know the answers, you think by giving the players the answers, they just know it too. They've just put it all together. Like, you told them Forbin Bottom, and like, that's the answer. And of course, now that I've told them that, they know that everybody knows that that's the answer.
That's the key.
And nobody at the table knows it. Nobody knows what that meant. Until they put context behind it, they don't know what it means. It's not like you, where you have all the context behind the curtain. Again, this goes into the choose your own adventure novel. Okay, there are multiple ways to solve the problem, and you need to let your players think of those different ways to solve the problem. And you need to know as a GM, how are some ways to get to the answer. You should have a flow chart. I highly recommend a flow chart.
Flow charts are awesome.
If you think about how you do it, or the backwards design methodology that Jared always talks about. Okay, with the Socratic method, asking how would somebody know this? Because there's also going to be those times when your players, you're going to give them all the answers, you're going to give them all the information, and your players are going to sit there and go, and they're going to be like sitting there with like blank looks on their face, and like their eyes are glazed over, and they're drooling, and they don't know what's going on. Okay, and you're like, Guys,
Guys,
I've given
hello.
it to you. Hello, I've given it to you. I've given you the answers, and your players aren't going to know what to do with the information that you've given them.
They're not, and you know, but back to stonewalling in particular. You know, if you feel that only stonewalling is the only recourse that you have, you've gone completely to the antithesis of role playing. Role playing is imagination. It is without boundary, and the only boundaries are natural consequences, or they should be natural consequences, to players' actions and players' decisions. One of the things that when we start stonewalling is it robs your players of their agency in the world.
Again, that was the podcast that we talked about. It was the agency in the world versus what is true player agency in the world. The true player agency in the world, and I think our listener Chris hit this perfectly when he actually talked about it. He did that story on the ship, okay, with the Nazis. And it was only 3 sessions of a story. It's a small thing, but still, he confined his players to a border. The players knew the border immediately. The players didn't say, we're getting a dinghy and we're going to land. Okay? Like, that didn't happen. And if it did happen, okay, maybe you let the players do that and they ride off to land, they get eaten by a shark. Okay? I don't know if that's the way that your players want to go. You can let them do that. What you're effectively showing your players is, listen, if you don't want to participate in the game that's being told, then I have no responsibility to keep you alive at that point. This is true harsh consequences. Like, I don't need to tell a story that fits your crazy machinations that you have.
And you know, it's funny because I was talking to my brother about one of his games that he did recently. He got a group of friends together to do a Call of Cthulhu game, and they were a salvage crew, and they sent to an abandoned ship, just kind of like Chris did. Except his was an active vessel. They had every chance in the world to hop back on their scavenge vessel.
They could have fled
and gone. See around haunted ghost. The players made the active choice to stay in the story. Now, if they want to hightail it, that is their freaking choice. The story is then over because, again, it's like what you said. This is a shared narrative. They have a responsibility to the story as much as you do. As a GM, master of ceremonies, whatever title that you have, they have a responsibility to that story as well. And if they're going to abandon their responsibility, then the story is essentially over. It is time for a different story. And if they're like, well, but we wanted the story of the bar fight, drunken, we were going to get to land and just get into a bar fight. It is up to you as the storyteller to decide if that is a story that you are interested in freaking telling. If you're like, sure, if that's what's going to be fun tonight, and you know what, I could use some ruckus fun my own self. I've run stories that were ruckus fun. Fun.
But know what they are going in. I mean, if you're doing a long campaign and your players just abandon everything with your story, it's like, what the hell happened?
Examine why. Yeah,
you go, what the hell happened? But also, you got to say to yourself, this is my story. The players can circumnavigate major parts of it by doing different things, by asking the right questions. Because this is what you have to think to yourself. Always think this when somebody asks you a question: is you are the NPC who possesses the information they need to have, and once they get the magic bowstring, I will reveal the information they need, because the magic bowstring will trigger my memory or something like that. Somebody goes, well, what about these elvish ruins that we're talking about, or like I heard the dark elves live in those forests or something like that, and you start asking questions that lead the mage or whoever's giving you the information to say, well, he knows the information, and you're asking him questions, and he's amenable and friendly to your guys. Why would he just not tell them the information?
Right. And in this situation, the one that we're talking about, the players are actually engaging in their responsibility to the narrative. they are still within the boundaries because they are still engaged in the story. They're still going after, I don't know, whatever the bowstring brings them, but or whatever information the old wizard has. But they're still going for it. All they're doing is skipping steps.
Yes. And that doesn't mean that your players are going to necessarily not go retrieve the bowstring. They might think the bowstring's important.
They might go, you know what? He told us what we need to know, but one of your players is like, I really want that bowstring.
Yeah, listen, I want to, quiver my, how do you, draw my bow with that bowstring.
Yeah, it's draw.
Yeah, draw. I forgot what it is to string the bow. Is it string the bow?
I think it's string.
Okay, well, here we are.
We ain't archers, folks.
We ain't archers. I try to remember back to when I watched the made-for-TV movie, The Odyssey, where Odysseus. You don't remember this?
No.
Oh, like it was great. Okay, and he
strung it with lamb guts.
No. It's just the end of the movie when, like, you know, in the Odyssey, when he comes back, he's disguised the old man, and everyone's trying to
hump his wife.
Yeah, everyone's trying to marry his wife and string the bow, and he comes in, he strings the bow, he fires it through all the axes that are set up, and then he's revealed to be Odysseus, and he kills everyone. It's just great. It was great.
Sounds like a hip movie. Whew. Okay.
Sorry, I'm off subject. I'm fired up. Let's do it.
Because you really hate stonewalling.
I do. It's not that you aren't. Again, what is a better way to tell your players that something isn't going to work is effectively this. Players say, we're going to go to Tibet. Sure, okay, I guess if that's what you want to do, you go to Tibet. Or your players are in the town where all the shit's going down. And they're like, remember that little bar that was, 35 miles off to the west? We're heading to that bar because that's our favorite bar in all the land. And if your players decide to go off and do that, send them there. And then when they get there, guess what? Nothing's happening. Okay, it's a quiet night in the bar. Okay, if you want to start a bar fight, you're going to be the ones doing the starting.
No one's coming up to you guys.
No one's coming up to you guys like this.
It's your favorite bar. Everyone freaking knows you.
Do you have any work for us? Oh no, another group of travelers came through and we took care of it. Make them be like, this is really stupid. Why did we go all the way out of our way to engage with this bar?
And exactly, you have two choices. You win one, placate them, and get, all right, you guys go to your favorite bar and get into a bar fight if you are interested in that. The other one is they get there and there's nothing to do. Like, guys, this isn't where the action is. The action is in the dark town of Glogloth. Not at your favorite bar.
They start coming back with their tail between their legs. They start heading back to town. When they're miles out, you see fire in the town. Uh-oh, guess what? You weren't there to stop it.
Sucks to be you guys.
Sucks to be you. Consequences. Consequences for actions that go against it. Consequences are better than the Stonewall because the consequences say if you don't sort of engage with the boundaries that I've given you, guess what? There's going to be consequences. And if you leave, maybe the town does fall to the undead. I don't know.
And exactly. It's natural consequences. Now, I tend to... when I do consequences, do it through like a sad moment, like to help my players realize that this is the time to reflect on your actions. For example, the dark town of Golgoth, the lone survival stumbles into their favorite bar after they've just had a raunchous night of drinking, and he's lost his whole family because you guys decided not to be heroes. Because what I want to create is the hero's moment. Now, again, this is all dependent on the story that I want to tell. If you are amenable to them going back to their favorite bar and starting a bar fight with the bartender that they always start the fight with, go for it. It's an open world.
But if you don't want them to leave, don't tell them, no, you can't do that.
Don't
ever. What is a better choice is either you let them go back to the bar, okay, you let them go all the way back out to the bar, or as they're leaving town, ring the town bell that invasion is coming and the horde of the undead is upon them. Okay? Now they have a choice. Do we want to go dick around in a bar, okay, and leave this town to whatever will happen from this horde of the undead? Or are we going to fight the undead? And, geez, serendipitous moment here. Just as we were about to leave, the horde of the undead shows up. Like, oh my god. That isn't stonewalling your players. That is throwing a roadblock in their way that is like, hey, by the way, this is the story, and it's come to you.
Yeah, having the story chase them is another completely optional thing. They all get back on their salvage vessel and start making way for land. Well, it seems the creature attached itself to the hull, or the engine just starts to stutter and die, and they find out that, the creature has sabotaged their engine. Now they're alone at sea.
Now they have to
and
go
the
salvage.
ship starts following them.
They have to go salvage a part in the salvage ship. Okay, like to do it, you're not going to say you can't get away, but I'm going to at least keep you around here a little bit longer
to help you reflect.
I'm going to let you think about that before you do it. But the one thing, and this is the worst thing that I hate as a player, and sorry, Ken, I love you dearly, but you do this to yourself. You only have the one way to execute the story. You've only thought of the one way to execute the story, and you are not amenable to any minor changes in the way to execute the story. That is the worst type of stonewalling. That is, every plan doesn't work. Okay? And when every plan doesn't work, when everything that I choose to do as a player doesn't work, unless I do it the exact way, unless I go research the right tomes, unless I, effectively handed the boss and the dungeons and told where to go. Like, I don't want to be told where to go. I want to kind of figure my way through. I want to be
invited.
Yes, I want to figure out my way through your story. I want to explore the nooks and crannies of it, because what tends to happen is if you only have one way to do it, that means you never fleshed out the rest of the world. That means you never thought about what my players might try to do and how they might try to interact with the world, or you are just not comfortable at all telling something that is not pre-written. Do not write your story like a novel. Okay? Nope. It does not work that way. You must write your story as more of Cliff's Notes, and guess what? The players kind of work around that. The players are going to ask different people that you never thought they'd ask for information, and it's really simple. The players don't know that person never knew the information, but you as a GM get to make that choice. It's a beautiful thing that happens behind the scenes, and your players look at you like you're a freaking wizard when you do it.
It's true. It's true. It's very true. And in that form of stonewalling, if you've only got one way that a riddle can be solved, just understand. Okay, so the previous company I worked for, we had like a learning day, right? Where we all go for this giant conference, and it's like an all-day thing. And they had a box, right? And this box, we had to figure out, like, I don't know, it was like 9 riddles that were around the room. And, the riddles would lead us to what the combination on the lock was. I took one look at that lock, and I said, it's attached to a clamp, a very weak clamp that kept the case closed. A very weak clamp. So I just looked at it and I said, okay. And I bent the clamp and opened up the box without solving a single riddle. Yeah, I got yelled at for that. I got yelled at by my bosses like, that's not how you're supposed to do this. When they should have applauded, like, wow, you looked at this an entirely different way. And that's the same way that we as storytellers should look at our players when they traverse when they pass our roadblocks and see ways that we did not anticipate. We as storytellers should applaud their ingenuity, welcome the change, engage in the fancy dance, because there's going to be that sudden, oh God, they're going to end this story really quickly and I don't have the next story set up. Okay, take a week break so you can set up the next story. Do whatever you have to do, but just don't put them down for engaging their brain, looking at something in a totally different light and hitting it with great accuracy. You know, let that, because when you do that, it takes away the prides of the players, and you can't take that away from them. You know what I mean? You have to applaud it. So, you know, that's my thought on that.
I agree with that. 100%. Do you have anything else you want to talk about for this one, Jared?
No, I think I'm pretty well set. I think that's, kind of my thoughts.
All right. Well, if you completely disagree, you like to stonewall your players because ha ha ha, this is my game. It's gonna be done my way. Or if you agree, hey, stonewalling's terrible. Let us know your thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts on stonewalling. So you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or contact us at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. You can go ahead and send us a little comment or whatever, and we'll reply to it. Or if you want to have a topic that you'd like to hear us discuss, maybe one of these episodes has kind of brought up something you're like, man, I'd like to hear their thoughts on XYZ. Let us know. We'd be happy to talk about one of those.
Love to talk about it.
And if you you can get us at all of the major podcast sites. Please share it with a friend, your family, other people that you know, gaming group, so on and so forth. We are on YouTube, so
smash that like button. Smash it.
Thank you, Jared. But we'll be back next week with another episode. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.